This is the sound of your ride home with Dad after he caught you vaping. Awkward, isn't it? Most vapes contain seriously addictive levels of nicotine and disappointment. Know the real cost of vapes. Brought to you by the FDA.
How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 2.
Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. It's Eric Erickson here across the United States. The phone number is 877-973-7425 if you want to be on the program. Okay, I realize a good host would start the show going straight into the topic at hand, but I guess I'm a bad host because I got to tell you. So if you weren't here yesterday, I'm in rural Louisiana. I'm actually in a town called St. Francisville, which is near where my parents live. And there's a little restaurant here. If you ever come to Louisiana, to the Baton Rouge area, there's this little restaurant called the Magnolia Cafe. And the food is just incredible. My sister just came by. I'm in this shack. The shack was built in 1873, they told me. And it's nice. And I got a nice little setup, and the Wi-Fi's fine. I can do the show from here. And my sister came by and she brought me one of my favorite po' boys. It's from this restaurant. I just, if you go, you never have eaten bread until you've been to Paris, until you've been to France. Bread in France is just, you can say I'm a snob and elitist. I don't care. I love bread, and the best bread happens to be in France. However, South Louisiana, they know how to make bread, and they have a particular sort of French bread that they use. And I know how to make it, but it takes like 4 days to make this bread. And it comes out, it's brown and it's crispy on top like French bread, but just pillowy soft in the middle. It's what they use for po' boys in South Louisiana. And this sandwich, it is really, really near paper thin slice pieces of blackened chicken breast on fresh baked po' boy bread, with bacon and Colby Jack cheese and a homemade spicy barbecue sauce. And I'm sitting here, my nose is running. It's spicy and it's so incredibly good. It's just the best food. This is why I love to eat. It's from where I grew up. I mean, you go to a gas station in rural Louisiana, the po' boys are just better than anything you'll eat at a fancy restaurant in any city in America. It's just such good food. I'm going to get fat when I'm here. I'm trying to eat like one meal a day just so I don't gain all the weight back that I've lost over the past few months. All right. Having said that, and I love you guys so much, I devoured as much as I could in commercial break, and the rest of it's sitting beside me, and I can smell it. And all I want to do is tell you guys, I'll be back. I got to go eat. Let's go to best stuff, and then but I'm not going to do that, because we do have to talk about what's going on out there. And I want to juxtapose a couple of different stories, because there's something very important happening, and it's one of those things where I'm stating the obvious, but it's one of those things where you probably don't recognize it, don't see it, don't process it. Last night, at the home of the Brooklyn Museum director, and then also, I'm just now learning, multiple Jewish board members' houses, for they were the Brooklyn Museum, so it's the director and the Jewish members of the board. Their homes were all vandalized. The chairman of the board of the board of directors, someone threw red paint all over the front of her house. Put up a sign, Ann Pasternak, Brooklyn Museum, white supremacist Zionist, and they covered the white sign with bloody red paint handprints. Now, you need to understand what that red handprint comes from is a particular mythologized portion of anti-Semitism. Palestinian Hamas activists several years ago kidnapped a number of Israelis. And there's a very famous picture as one of the Israelis was being murdered. His hand, covered in blood, was on a window in Gaza. And as his body fell, it left a bloody handprint on the window. It was an Israeli being murdered, covered in blood. And when you see the Hamasniks use a red handprint, that's what they're calling back to, is an Israeli citizen being murdered live on TV, falling away from the window with his bloody red handprint still on the window. That's what they're calling to. And they left these red handprints at the home of the Brooklyn Museum director and at multiple Jewish board members' homes, vandalized. This is 100% the fault of the Democratic Party. Noah Pollock has this tweet up, writes at the Free Beacon. This is 100% the fault of the Democratic Party. I'm not being partisan, even though you may think I am. Everyone knows the groups, activists, and donors behind the street thuggery, intimidation, and criminal acts are tied to the left. And the Democrats who run the DOJ and local law enforcement in these blue areas and jurisdictions continue to refuse to do anything about it. They do not investigate. They do not arrest. They do not prosecute. The perpetrators, Muslim and leftist groups, have been given de facto immunity by the Democratic Party, and they know it, and so they're escalating. I want to tie this to a completely unrelated story. The attacks on the Supreme Court by the left. The appeal to heaven flag. It was not controversial until 3 weeks ago. It was flying until 2 weeks ago outside City Hall in San Francisco. That's how non-controversial the flag was. But because Sam Alito and his wife flew the flag outside their vacation home, suddenly it's a symbol of white nationalism and the January 6th insurrection. What's so notable is that in January of 2021, the New York Times did a huge story on the symbols of January 6th. And they actually showed a video when someone was flying an appeal to heaven flag in the video, and they zoomed past and cropped past the appeal to heaven flag to focus on the yellow "Don't Tread on Me" flag. In fact, they covered a bunch of flags that were symbols of the January 6th protests, and they didn't bother to cover in this article in the New York Times the appeal to heaven flag. They totally ignored it. The appeal to heaven flag is very common. Those of you up in Connecticut listening right now on WICC and WTIC, you know how common the appeal to heaven flag is in New England. It was the symbol of the Navy, of the coastal Navy in Massachusetts before it became a state, and then the Massachusetts police have flown it on their boats. It's very common in Maine for people to fly the appeal to heaven flag. But suddenly, the left has declared it controversial, and the news media, CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and others, they've all covered the appeal to heaven flag as if it's controversial. Sam Alito, John Roberts, Sam Alito's wife, they spoke in candid conversation at a Supreme Court Historic Society dinner, and a left-wing activist recorded them, pretended to be a Catholic conservative, and got Sam Alito to agree the nation should return to its godly roots. She's apparently furious that John Roberts didn't play the game. She told John Roberts, "Don't you think that the court can impose morality on people?" She never asked Sam Alito that. She never asked about his desire for the Supreme Court to impose morality on people. Just should the nation go back to being a godly, moral nation? And Sam Alito agreed with her. And then John Roberts says, "It's not the role of the court to impose morality on anyone. My Muslim friends would kind of be opposed to the idea of me imposing my Christian values on them, and I would be opposed to them imposing imposing their Muslim values on me. It's not the role of the court. The role of the court is to decide whether legislation is constitutional or not to make a values judgment to be imposed on the country. That's what John Roberts said. And Sam Alito didn't say that he must want to do it. No, he never said anything. He wasn't asked. CNN. And I focus on CNN, one, because, I used to work there, and I've still got good friends there, and they're the network that tries to claim to be, like, above partisanship. We all know they're on the left. But they try to be center-left, not far left like MSNBC, certainly not on the right like Fox or further to the right like Newsmax, OAN, or anything. But they try to be center-left. Jake Tapper, to his credit, he's Jewish. He's concerned about this rise of anti-Semitism. He's covered some of this. Wolf Blitzer has. Wolf Blitzer used to be the president of AI PAC, and he's been maligned by Joy Reid on MSNBC for being a tool of the Zionists. But generally, the network, CNN, has ignored the anti-Semitic attacks in New York, but they've overplayed the allegations of the Supreme Court. What the left can do in this country is manufacture a controversy. It wasn't controversial. It wasn't an appearance of impropriety having the Appeal to Heaven flag or even the upside-down American flag, which at the time the Washington Post said was just a neighborly dispute. And now CNN is regularly trotting out Sam Alito's left-wing neighbor to smear him. But they're ignoring the anti-Semitic attacks in New York. They're giving disproportionate coverage to a non-scandal, and by claiming it's a scandal, they're trying to turn it into something that can hurt the right. But they will not cover the left-wing anti-Semitism out there because it might just hurt Joe Biden. Giving disproportionate coverage. Sam Alito's neighbor is willing to come on television and be accusatory towards and malign Sam Alito and his wife, who aren't going to respond. She's taken advantage of it. She's playing to the left. She is of the left. We know she's of the left. She called Sam Alito's wife, or one of the neighbors, I think it was this one, maybe it was a different, called Sam Alito's wife the C word. And they're willing to give disproportionate coverage to that while not covering this other stuff that could harm the left. They're manufacturing controversy where there is none to smear the right and ignoring actual controversy to avoid exposing the left. It is why so many people on the right are checking out and feeling put upon and feeling aggrieved and feeling like victims. Where do we go for the mainstream press to embrace our storytelling? They just, by whole cloth, whatever the left says, they embraces the story. The left says the Appeal to Heaven flag is controversial. By God, CNN's going to run it as if it's controversial. They're not going to question the story. They're going to run with the story and make the right defend itself. It is why so many people do feel put upon on the right. I totally get it. Where do we go to have our stories told fairly and accurately other than Fox News? They can run to the New York Times, they can run to the Washington Post, they can run to USA Today, they can run to CNN, they can have their stories just embraced as they frame them without any question from the editors and producers at those networks and those newspapers. But people on the right, no, you got to go to talk radio or you got to go to Fox News. And the problem is more and more people on the right are discrediting themselves with fake stories that have no version of truth, and they're being embraced just like the left is. And the problem is it discredits us when we embrace so many lies. We discredit the media for embracing left-wing lies, and yet so many people on the right now want to engage in the same behavior and overshadows credible stories. The Brooklyn Museum's director has had bloody handprints placed all over the front of her house and red paint thrown and called a Zionist, a white Zionist. That's a real scandal. Sam Alito talking off the record about his Christian values is not a scandal. That the left gets the national press to play up Sam Alito and downplay a growing, festering anti-Semitism on the left, that's a real scandal. And it's also one that's going to get worse and going to hurt more people. I have a lot of Jewish friends. I'm more and more concerned about their safety in this country. And almost all of them now, including those of my friends on the left who have been very vigorously anti-gun, I think to a person now, they're all gun owners. And I don't blame them. There's something sick, sad, festering on the left. And if it was happening on the right, the president and all the media would denounce it. But because it's happening on the left and they must protect their precious, they say nothing at a time they need to speak up.
We have one more act for you this evening. I don't even need to say his name. Mr. Bob Dylan.
From the director of Walk the Line and Ford vs. Ferrari.
For anyone who's going to hold your attention on stage, you have to kind of be a freak.
And starring Timothy Chalamet as Bob Dylan.
Are you a freak?
Hope so.
Once upon a time, you're just so fine.
Inspired by the true story.
I want to know which side he's on.
This Christmas.
They just want me singing Blowing in the Wind for the rest of my life.
Bobby, what do you want to be?
Whatever it is they don't want me to be.
He defied everyone.
Turn it down!
Play it loud!
To change everything.
He's our Elvis.
With no direction home.
Timothy Chalamet, Edward Norton, Elle Fanning, Monica Barbaro.
Make some noise, BD. Track some mud on the carpet.
A complete unknown. Only in theaters Christmas Day. Rated R. Under 17, not admitted without parent.
Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States of America. The phone number, if you want to be on the program, 877-973-7425. I have thought about how I can say this without causing too much heartburn for management. I started watching Acolyte. It's the newest Star Wars show on Disney. It is very intersectionally progressive. They've got this actor is non-binary and this actress is lesbian and the director is lesbian and married to one of the actresses, and it's all very woke, intersectional. And there are a lot of people on the right who are like, oh, it's so woke, it's so intersectional, and it's so left-wing, and it's so postmodern. I mean, the Jedis are now the colonizing bad guys. You can see this all taking shape. I'm going to tell you I don't care about those criticisms. There's some validity to them. One of the things I've noticed with postmodern intersectional wokes is they have to take wholesome things and pervert them, so to speak, for lack of a better word. So you have take the story of David and Nathan in the Bible, a strong friendship. Now it must have homoerotic undertones. It can't just be strong male friendships. In fact, what we're seeing now is any strong male friendship must be presumed to be gay. And you have to have the intersectional characters. And you know what happens is the most woke intersectional character, the black transgender lesbian, is the hero of the show. Can't be controversial because that character, if controversial, degrades the whole of the narrative. So must be the super virtuous, most boring character ever created with no flaws ever. And it's just not good. But the truth is, this show, forget all the woke intersectional garbage. It's just a bad show. The writing is horrendous. The talking is horrendous. The dialogue is horrendous. The script is horrendous. The sets are small and unimaginative. No imagination whatsoever. If this is what we get with the post-intersectional woke takeover of Star Wars, I'm kind of done. It's just a garbage show. And it's the language, the dialogue, the scripting, the acting has nothing to do about the woke intersectional nonsense. No other nonsense out there is China buying up all the gold out there with the BRICS. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa buying it up. Those are the BRICS. They're expecting economic turmoil in this country. The head of Swiss America is now doing a lot of commentaries on YouTube. You should go watch it. It's youtube.com/Swiss America, where he's talking about a lot of this stuff. Swiss America, of course, wants to help you protect your hard-earned assets and educate you about the secret war on cash. They've got more at youtube.com/Swiss America, but also you can call or text my name, Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 800-289-2646. You just mention my name at 800-289-2646. You can also go to SwissAmerica.com/Eric, SwissAmerica.com/ERICK, or call or text my name, Eric, to 800-289-2646, 800-289-2646. 2646. You can also learn a lot about them at youtube.com/SwissAmerica. Message and data rates may apply. The number again, 800-289-2646. Just text my name, Eric, E-R-I-C-K.
This episode is brought to you by Skinny Pop Popcorn. Perfectly popped, endlessly delicious. Oh, so light and crunchy. Skinny Pop Original Popcorn is the snack you've been searching for. Made with just 3 simple ingredients: popcorn kernels, sunflower oil, and salt. Snacking never felt or tasted so good. Perfectly popped, endlessly delicious. Give yourself permission to snack and pick up Skinny Pop Original Popcorn today.
Welcome. It's Eric Erickson here across the United States, coming to you from rural Louisiana, West Feliciana Parish. My parents live in East Feliciana. It's where I'm from. I'm over in West Feliciana in St. Francisville, Louisiana this week. It's wonderful, wonderful to be home. Ran into a long time, old classmate of mine. I wouldn't say friend. We hadn't talked to each other since 1993. But it relates to it. It gave me a great monologue running into Omar. It just came in and recognized me. It's kept up with me. I don't really keep in contact with a lot of people I went to school. And, you know, I guess it's a personality trait. I don't really keep in touch with a lot of people I went to college with or law school with, other than a couple of friends of mine. It really just a couple of people from high school. But so I ran into this guy. I was in a little coffee shop having some breakfast, and he came in and we start talking, and he knew who I was, reintroduced himself. We went to high school together, and we start talking politics. He knows what I do for a living, and he asked me about Project 2025. Now, this is why this is so funny. So it's been several weeks ago now. There's a guy on the radio in Macon, Georgia, where I live. It is a black radio station, Black Voices. And a friend of mine from Macon, Darnell, came up to me and was talking about Project 2025. And he's a Trump story. He's one of the Black Voices for Trump guys. Super guy. Loves Donald Trump, and he was laughing about the guy on the radio in Macon talking about Project 2025, and even used the "don't you know what time it is" phrase about Project 2025. For those of you who aren't familiar with Project 2025, the Heritage Foundation started this along with other partners on the right, and it's essentially a jobs board for people to go into the Trump administration. When a presidential administration takes office, it can take up to two. Think about this. You have a 4-year term, and it can take up to 2 years to fill all the positions. If you're really effective, take about a year still, 6 months at least, because you got to apply, you got to vet people, you got to make sure that they're not going to obstruct your agenda, but they're going to be with your agenda. So what Kevin Roberts did, it's a really good idea, and I know there are others who want to take credit for it, but I'm going to give Kevin Roberts at the Heritage Foundation the credit for it, because I really think Heritage has championed this more than most, even as they're trying not to say it's their idea. It's at the Heritage Foundation. Come on, they have good ideas. And so essentially they've created this jobs board for 2025 so they can vet everyone now, figure out who's got the good abilities and where they should be in the administration. So on day one, here's an entire staff of people that have been vetted by the conservative movement to be embedded in the Trump White House, so it doesn't take 6 months to a year to get people in. You can go to the website, project2025.org, if you want to put your resume in, if you want to find out how to apply, if you want to be in the Trump administration somewhere in America, you can do it now. You don't have to wait. So you can get vetted, screened, give your resume, give your background. They can find a good place for you, tell them what you're interested in. It's a brilliant idea. It really is. But it's being maligned by the left as some sinister dark force to bring white nationalists into the White House. It's a very DC conversation, except. So several weeks ago, I'm in Macon. My friend Darnell, who supports Trump, is laughing about the guy on the radio station in Macon being very sinister. I mean, using the phrase that the Trump kids on Twitter use, "Don't you know what time it is?" And it's remarkable to me that a local voice, a local radio guy would talk about the story. So now fast forward several weeks. I'm in this little coffee shop. This guy I have not seen since 1993. Reintroduces himself, strikes up conversation, starts talking politics, asks me if I know what this Project 2025 is. Common story. Local black radio host in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, was talking about Project 2025 and telling black men, you may think Donald Trump's with you, but you need to check out Project 2025. You can go to their website. It's the Heritage Foundation. All these right-wing groups and all these groups that oppose your civil rights and all these groups that support getting rid of the Voting Rights Act and all these conservative groups are trying to get all the white nationalists in the Trump administration. And you may think Donald Trump is for you, but if you vote for Donald Trump, look at what you're getting. You're getting all these white nationalists. They're already building the database for them to put them in. What I think is so funny is so I'm in this coffee shop this morning, and I have this conversation. So I've had a conversation with my buddy Darnell several weeks ago in Macon. Have a conversation this morning with Omar here in St. Francisville, Louisiana, and have a guy who follows me. He's a conservative, the African American community. And I see he sent me a direct message yesterday at 7:15 p.m., 8:15 Eastern Time. Alert, alert. Black voters are soaking up this Project 2025 stuff. Republicans need a strong rebuttal. All right, y'all. If you listen to me all the time, I tell you, anecdote is not data. And these are just 3 anecdotes. An anecdote from Macon, Georgia, an anecdote from Twitter, and an anecdote from St. Francisville, Louisiana. Now, I have not talked to or exchanged notes with the listener on Twitter, but there's a common thread. That common thread is black men on radio who have an audience, who are in a Democratic network, Democratic activists, getting talking points, big stories they need to talk about on radio, and they're talking about Project 2025. They're not doing it on national radio. National radio is pretty easy to track. So there are programs you can get where you can monitor conversations on radio, things that are said, transcripts, but it mostly applies to national radio shows. There are some that apply to local radio, but they're not good and they're not comprehensive. So it's much harder to track. And I find it very notable that in Macon, Georgia, and in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, I don't know who it is, but it's a different people. It's local hosts. It's not nationally syndicated shows, but they're talking about this Project 2025, and they're trying to tell their black male audience, you need to watch out for this. You can go to the website. You can see it's a bunch of white nationalists, and they're trying to use it to scare black men. At a time, the data shows a substantial number of younger black men have moved in Donald Trump's direction. Now, let me tie a bunch of stuff together, and it goes back to the beginning of the show here and in the beginning of this hour where I talk about on CNN, they literally have Sam Alito's left-wing neighbor coming on CNN to malign Mr. and Mrs. Alito, to cast aspersions on them, to talk about how mean they are. A neighborly dispute. And CNN is willing to give airtime to this neighborly dispute, and it comes from manufactured controversy by the left that's willing to say these flags are an actual controversy and Sam Alito is actually controversial because they're trying to undermine the credibility of the Supreme Court, because if the left doesn't capture an institution, they try to destroy the credibility of the institution. It's all a power play by the left, and CNN is following along with it and doing it, and it's easy to see and it's easy to follow. Well, here they come manufacturing a controversy over nothing with this Project 2025 stuff. And what I think the right doesn't understand is the cultural credibility of these institutions on the left that fly under the radar, like local black radio and local black churches are very powerful things in local black communities. You have to understand that after the Civil War, the black church was the centerpiece of black community, particularly in the South. And as black residents moved north to Detroit and New York and other areas, the black churches there took off, and they became places of community. And that community ultimately, as technology grew and spread, into black radio. Now, you conservatives, you listen to me and you listen to others on Conservative Talk Radio because of Rush Limbaugh and The Rise and Paul Harvey and the like back in the day. And conservative talk radio means something, but it means the same in the black community with black voices on radio. And there are dominant black voices, you know, what Charlemagne the God, Steve Harvey, and others, but also in local communities, local black voices. And the Democratic Party networks pretty powerfully with these local voices on local shows to get out talking points because they know there's a community of voter that listens. And so they're seeding this story out there, hoping it takes root in the black community to cast doubt on the future of the Trump administration, all because of this Project 2025. This is the way it works. And by the way, whether you agree with it or not, and I don't, it's actually really effective politics. It's actually really effective at the grassroots level. So consider yourself warned if you're a conservative, if you're in Washington, listen, if you're at the Heritage Foundation, you need to know this is going on to be able to figure out a response to it. And I don't know what the response should be. But it's definitely, anecdotes, not data, but I suspect if you were able to dig, and it's hard to get the data, you'd be able to find it out. I'm very fascinated by this. But what the larger issue here, though, is how the left is able to manufacture these scandals and have so much of it taken so seriously by members of the mainstream media in ways people on the right can't. We're always put on the defensive. And it's why so many people have tuned out of these national news networks and cancel their subscriptions to these national newspapers because you don't have the cultural street cred to see the story the way the left does, because the younger reporters are on the left. The younger reporters consider themselves activists to advance the left. The younger reporters do this on a regular basis, willfully, knowingly. They have their winners and they have their losers they've picked and they want to advance or to hurt. So you have people on the right just checking out, saying, why even bother? CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post, USA Today, MSNBC, NBC, ABC, CBS, PBS, they've all covered the appeal to heaven flag. A scandal that is not a scandal. It's not a scandal. And if you think it's a scandal, you are a dim-witted, dumb, easily manipulated person. And I do want you to know that, frankly. If you think Sam Alito flying the appeal to heaven flag is controversial, you are a dim-witted, dumb, easily manipulated person. Meanwhile, Ron DeSantis on a debate stage in November of 2023 can say the terrorists are already here. They have already been crossing the southern border. And the New York Times will fact check him and say, that's not true. Experts say it's not true. And now today, the New York Times, NBC News, and the New York Post are all reporting that 6 Chechens have been arrested by Homeland Security, several of them discussing bombs and bombings. And we know for certain the majority of them illegally crossed the southern border and were let go in the spring of 2023, 5 months before Ron DeSantis was fact-checked false by the New York Times for saying what was happening actually happened. And they'll give disproportionate coverage in the mainstream media to the fact-checker saying Ron DeSantis is false than they will to the actual truth. It's a dangerous game they're playing to discredit and deconstruct the institutions they do not control and to use the American media to do it. Speaking of the unsecure border, you know, Americans for Prosperity's Foundation has been taking people to the border so they can see the situation for themselves and know the problems at the border themselves. And Americans for Prosperity has solutions that they wish to remind you about, all at the website Secure Border, SecureAmerica.com. If you go to Secure Border, SecureAmerica.com, you can see the common sense solutions that are out there from the right, whether it's more Border Patrol agents or a more effective wall, an expanded wall, technology in places a wall doesn't work, more funding for the Border Patrol, more secure areas to shelter and house the illegal aliens until they can be processed. It's all there. It's all common sense. It's all policy proposals out there. And then you can take action and very easily contact your public officials and tell them to take action. It's Secure Border, SecureAmerica.com by Americans for Prosperity. Americans for Prosperity around the country, educating conservatives on common sense conservative solutions, and in the states doing the business of the conservative movement. Secure Border, SecureAmerica.com.
This episode is brought to you by AWS. Amazon Q Business is the new generative AI assistant from AWS. Many tasks can make business slow, like wading through mud. Help! Luckily, there's a faster, easier, less messy choice. Amazon Q can securely understand your business data to help you streamline tasks, like summarizing quarterly results or doing complex analyses in no time. Q got this. Learn what Amazon Q Business can do for you at aws.com/learn more.
Welcome. It's Eric Erickson here across the United States of America. I am glad to have you with me. Y'all, I got to tell you about this story. And it's funny and it's sad at the same time. The lead singer of the Four Tops said a Detroit area hospital restrained him and ordered a psychological exam after refusing to believe he was actually a part of the famous Motown music group. Alexander Morris filed a lawsuit Monday against Ascension Macomb Oakland Hospital in Warren, Michigan, alleging racial discrimination and other misconduct during an April 2023 visit for chest pain and breathing problems. Hospital staff wrongfully assumed he was mentally ill when he revealed his identity as a celebrity figure. The Four Tops started in the 1950s and had the hits like I Can't Help Myself, Sugar Pie Honey Bunch. It's the same old song. They were inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1990. He wasn't an original member, but he joined the group in 2019. The lawsuit says a nurse finally believed he was a member of the group, and the psychological exam was canceled. They offered him a $25 gift card and an apology. That's just, I mean, it's sad and terrible, but also, here's $25. We're going to bill you $10,000, but here's a $25 gift card. We're sorry. We didn't believe you, thought you were crazy, and ordered a psychological evaluation and restrained you. Oh, my gosh. Wow. I feel bad for the guy, and I shouldn't laugh, but it is kind of funny. Good grief. All right. When we come back, we got to talk. So, well, let me just give you this one wild bit. This is from WSB TV in Atlanta, Georgia. An Arizona man was arrested in May for planning a mass shooting in Atlanta, targeting African Americans in the city to start a race war. Mark Adams Prieto is accused of selling rifles to people to provide weapons to begin a race war ahead of the 2024 presidential election, according to the Department of Justice. He was indicted Tuesday by a federal grand jury following a months-long investigation by the FBI, and his arrest in mid-May. An affidavit submitted in court by members of the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force in Arizona detailed how the investigation began. According to the affidavit, a reliable source reported that Prieto expressed a desire to incite a race war prior to the election. Wild stuff. All of it coming to Atlanta. According to documents, he said he wanted to carry it out in Atlanta because why is Georgia such a blankety-blank state now? When I was a kid, that was one of the most conservative states in the country. Why is it not now? Because as the crime got worse in L.A. and St. Louis and all those other cities, all the blankety-blanks moved out of those places and moved to Atlanta. That's why it's not so great anymore. Actually, sir, we're a great state and city because I'm on the radio here, among other things. What a horrible person. I hope he stays in jail forever.